Okay.
The idea was that each intern would be there every day, but only one intern would be there at the night. So the schedule offset. The residents had the same schedule, but there was only one resident there, and then there was a resident on the other side. And so those residents then, one resident covered both wings on their night on. The idea was that every patient was admitted would be worked up by the intern first, by him or herself, and then, if necessary, there'd be a consultation with the resident. The resident would work up every patient as well, but it would be a less thorough workup, would build on the intern's workup, and that was the backing of the real neophyte with the just beyond being a neophyte person. And then there was a staff internist assigned as the preceptor for the ward. So every morning, then there would be a meeting of the nursing staff, the two interns, the resident, and the attending staff person, a senior faculty member, where every new patient would be presented to the whole group by the intern, and then the intern's activities would be reviewed, and of course the resident may or may not have worked up the patient by that point, so there might be resident input, and certainly then the attending faculty member would be there to verify, to correct, to suggest, and so on. When medical students rotated through, then often it was the medical student who did the presenting. So it was the classic teaching hospital where each morning this troop of white coated people, the interns and residents with white pants and short white coats, the attending faculty member in business attire with a long white coat, and the nurses in their garb. So we would descend on the patient after it had been presented in a conference room. Then we would descend on the patient, and the student or the intern would illustrate what the physical findings were. The patients tolerated this for the most part fairly well. They got a lot of it, some of them loved it because they got a lot of attention. So there was tension there, there was some humor, sometimes a lot of humor, sometimes a lot of tragedy, just depending on the circumstances and the patients involved. This was a demanding schedule. On each ward, there's a small sort of intern resident workspace that included a basic clinical lab. So it was a microscope, there were dipsticks, there was stool guaiac testing and so on. So the intern was expected to do the basic workup, right? Draw blood, get a stool and urine sample, do all those examinations and report the results. More involved lab tests, of course, were sent down to the hospital's clinical lab. If you only had one or two patients, it was a fairly simple process. These patients usually were admitted through the clinic or the emergency room. So during the day, most of them came through the outpatient clinics where these patients were getting care. And if they needed hospitalization, then they were referred in. Generally, they came with records and initial workup, which was helpful, but not always. And then during the night, it was admissions through the emergency room, usually more serious. That is, people and much sicker tended to be at that point because they hadn't been getting care in a clinical, in an outpatient setting many times. So, one or two patients, interesting work. There were bad nights. I've once had as many as 13 admissions, which meant, of course, you never got any sleep. There were rooms in the nursing school nearby assigned to us. So if it was possible to go to sleep, you go there, and the nurses could reach you directly if they needed you, or if there was a new admission. So all of us hoped that we could get a full night's sleep. Rarely did that happen. Usually we got 3-4 hours, sometimes none at all. That's when I had that reactive depression sort of thing. After I was there about a month, I guess, I realized that I was sad. I couldn't focus. I was having trouble finishing the workup. I thought, what's this? And a couple of days it bothered me, and then one Sunday morning I woke up and looked at her and said, I don't think I can go in. I just can't get there. And this is what story we'd mentioned to you before, so at that point talked about it, and Ardith made it. She saved my bacon, said, you've got to go in. And she essentially urged me to get dressed. I said, I'm going to have to call somebody. Talked about that. First person anyway, she got me dressed. She drove me in and essentially kicked me out of the car at the front door of the hospital and said, go in. So I went in, had the exchange, when you come back in, especially on the weekend,